Hello, Internet! Welcome to episode 306 of the Assorted Calibers podcast, the second bit of podcast. There's a little bit for everyone. I'm Weerd, and with me tonight, the greatest hostess in the entire universe. I dare you to find a better one. I dare you. I bet money. Aaron Pellet. How you doing, Aaron?
I think I'm beginning to question my life choices now.
Oh, yes?
So, for our, I guess, all of our listeners, because they don't have access to the Discord, Welawant has been, and I don't really know why he's on our Discord. Actually, he doesn't contribute anything.
He's been a guest on the show a few times, and we had an ACP mag dump where we specifically were talking about tech support drama, and it was definitely we got to get Welawant in there because he tells some horror stories.
Right, but anyway, he has access to the Walmart version of Amazon Prime, and there's no minimum orders on that and free shipping. And he's decided to use it for evil. And he has been shipping all of us packages of cup noodles, specifically the campfire s'mores flavor, because it's on sale, or on clearance, I should say. And for our patrons, you're going to hear on the blooper reel of me tasting it. And I understand why it was on clearance. And I'm starting to feel just a little funny in the tummy, and I don't know if I'm gonna regret this later. If I suddenly disappear from the show, Weerd, it's because I've made a dash to the bathroom.
Please bash your hand against the keyboard in the Discord chat, and I'll know what that means.
Okay.
If I see sudden cat typing and then an enter from Aaron Pellet, I know that it is the bowels.
but yeah, you know how that little tickle you get at the base of your stomach right when things are beginning to not sit well? Yeah, that's kind of how I'm feeling now.
Oh no.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. I had a really great week last week, and of course that's the week you decided to go on vacation. And I've had stuff going on, so I'm not having as good of a week. But that's your segue.
Yes.
Because you've literally gotten the main topic, pilgrimage to Ogden.
Yes.
So, how are you doing, Weerd?
I am doing quite well. I have been busy. It's going to be just for all the listeners to know. It's going to be a bit of a spotty summer. Because my wife is on a sabbatical from her work. She was getting pretty burnt out and decided that, you know what, it might be a good idea to pump the brakes a little bit. And so everybody's home in the house, and my daughter's home from school. And so there's going to be a lot of fun family activities, which might impact the show ever so slightly. And I suspect all of you lovely listeners will understand. I will keep it as regular as possible. But yeah, there's just like last week, there was no show, and, next week there's but then there's going to be another missing week, and then there'll be a missing week a little later in August, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, so that's all. Well, one of the reasons why I missed the week was so my daughter got out of school. My parents like to take cruises, and if a child is under a certain age, they actually can ride for free in the cabin with the paying adults, and so they're more than happy to take they took my daughter along, and my wife says, well, she's going to be gone. Why don't we go too? And I said, well, where do you want to go? She said, let's go out west somewhere. And she mentioned possibly going to Utah. And I said, well, if we're going to Utah, I really, really want to go to Ogden because that is the hometown of John Moses Browning, and there's a whole bunch of stuff dedicated to him there. And so she said that sounded great. So we went to Salt Lake City. We spent a bunch of time visiting various sites in Salt Lake City, had an absolutely great time. I really, really enjoyed myself there, and we'll probably end up going back at some point. And then actually on our last day, because that was just how it all lined up, we went to Ogden, and I have a link in the show notes to my blog, to something that I do other than the podcast. That was a perfect situation to put all my photograph and observations of Ogden. But I went to we first went to John Moses Browning's grave, and it's a very, very lovely cemetery. And I noticed some people had left some pennies on his grave marker, and I realized that I had not brought any such thing because I hadn't even thought about it. I'm going to bring some spent 45 ACP cases the next time I'm in Ogden, and specifically Winchester branded because of Browning's relationship with the Winchester Firearms Company.
I was going to ask how you planned to get that in your luggage without causing a problem, but then I recall you fly with a firearm, don't you?
Well, I do, but interestingly enough, when you fly with a with a firearm, you actually need to actually have the ammunition outside of the lock container. That's actually
right.
Not it's against the rules, and so yeah. But so the spent ammo, I just put it in my checked luggage. I wouldn't leave live ammo out on a gravestone. That seems slightly
that's wasteful.
It's also wasteful, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I guess I just figured that, this looks vaguely gun-related. You know, the TSA would see it and then open your luggage and root around, and you might have problems.
Well, the cool thing about the TSA is they're not very bright. And if you happen to be listening to the show and you're a member of the TSA, make better life choices. And someday if we meet, even if you tell me that you're a fan of the show, I'm going to make your life uncomfortable. Because I'll tell that story.
You're going to ask him to pat you down, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Is the and so yeah, we went to the grave. Then we went and grabbed some lunch. I think it was called Pig in the Jar. Was it called? Oh, it's right up the street from Union Station, and it was really good. So once we were well fed and knew that we could uninterrupted go in there, we went to Union Station. I will again highly recommend anyone who could get to Ogden, go check it out, because you pay one fee, they give you a wristband, and that gives you access to all of the museums. And Union Station, it's just an old historical train station, and there are trains, there are locomotives outside that you can view. There's an indoor train museum. There's an art gallery. There's a classic car gallery, and then the upstairs is the John Moses Browning Museum, which has not all of his guns, because it would need to be twice that size, but a lot of guns and a lot of prototypes and stuff that was physically made by John Browning's hands himself. And it was absolutely amazing. Yeah. And then finally, to close it out, the current owners have expressed idea to make it open to the public someday, but it is not there yet. But I did drive by to the John Moses Browning mansion and checked that out, and just to really pay my respects and just to have a look at it. And then then we went home. We had dinner, chilled out for a little bit, then went to the airport. And in Boston, I lucked out. Ever so often you roll the dice and get it right, and the TSA suddenly decides that, we're gonna pretend like it's 1999 again, and just put your bags through the little through the X-ray, and then you just walk through the metal detector, and you're all good. But on the way back, they were doing the body scanner, and I've only been through one of those, and that was at Heathrow Airport in London, because you don't have rights when you're in London, and so if you refuse the scanner, they let you know that they're going to take you, put you in a holding cell, and then they'll strip search you when they're ready, which means you'll miss your flight. And I went, well, I guess I'll go through the scanner. And they said it far less joyfully than I did. It was a very unpleasant experience. But yeah, so I got the pat down, and this time I got a TSA agent and a trainee, and the TSA agent did not want to be touching my naughty bits, and the trainee, if he was trained in anything, like, he was trying as far as he could not to look at anything that was going on there. So those are your tax dollars hard at work, and my mission was accomplished. And yeah, we arrived home on the 4th of July, and I was so damn jet lagged on the 4th of July. But yeah, we're back, and I'm more or less caught up on sleep and feeling better about things, ready to record a show.
So, yeah, while you were gone, some things happened.
Yes. Specifically, I will lead into this because, let me tell you, this is right into Aaron's wheelhouse, so I'm going to...
Ding dong, Chevron is dead, Chevron is dead, Chevron is dead. Ding dong, Chevron is dead, Chevron is dead, hooray!
Yes, you have been hearing, if you are a regular listener of the Assorted Calibers podcast, you know that, well, I mean, everybody should hate Chevron deference, except for the people that abuse their power, but you should know that Aaron Pellet hates Chevron deference with the heat of a million suns. And the Supreme Court has struck down Chevron deference, and now I am going to get the hell out of the way because for opposite day, Aaron is the one that has a lot to say about this.
Okay.
or not. If you don't, that's fine.
I actually didn't expect this. I thought you would have so much to say about this.
I have so much to say about everything.
Well, this is true.
If you want, I could do the rest of the show just talking about the murder cows on Antelope Island in the Great Salt Lake. They were very cute.
Okay, well, yeah. I can do extemporaneous. So this came as a shock to me, as I think it came as a shock to a lot of people. I think most of us expected that SCOTUS would, reinterpret, would restrict, would basically rein in the powers of Chevron, but not remove it whole cloth. And so for me and for a lot of people, this was like an early Christmas present, and it was just a great way to start my weekend. And as I said on various social medias, this decision reaffirms a separation between the judicial and executive branches, because it's the purpose of the legislature to write the laws and the executive branch to enforce those laws and the judicial to interpret those laws. We don't allow police officers to write and interpret the laws they enforce, but that's what the precedent of Chevron deference has done over the past 40 years, because so many of these federal agencies, perhaps even all of them, they have their own enforcement teams. It's not just the ATF and the DEA, but I believe you pointed out to me that even the Department of Education, has its own SWAT team?
Mm-hmm. I had mentioned that I'd specific. I think Oddball pointed that one out because we had a very awakening moment with Aaron with this, just the, wait a second, what? And it's one of those like, oh no, they all have SWAT teams, but not all. I was looking up Library of Congress, and actually a few years ago, I need to look it up now, but a few years ago, the Library of Congress got police force got lumped in with the Capitol Police Force. So no longer does the Library of Congress have their own SWAT team, but the Capitol Police
the point
does.
Of the matter, the point of the matter is that they did. Mm-hmm. Oh, good Lord. So yeah, as wonderful as this is, I have to compare it to NYSERPA v. Bruin, mm-hmm. which was an equally unexpected and landmark change. And we have seen in the 2 years since how there are some states who have not only fought it, but, dug in their heels, stuck their fingers in their ears and gone, la, 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 we can't hear you. And that was a very unambiguous ruling by SCOTUS. So compared to this, I am certain that the federal Leviathan is going to be very reluctant to give up this power, and this change is not going to occur overnight, and it's going to take many years and likely many lawsuits to reduce the regulatory state to a government that is closer to what the Founding Fathers envisioned. We're never going to get back to that original vision. It's just the government is too big and too powerful and too entrenched, and I like quoting Jerry Pournelle's Iron Law of Bureaucracy, which essentially states that given enough time, any organization, no matter how charitable, stops caring primarily about its original purpose and exists just to further its existence.
Mm-hmm.
And so, the federal bureaucracy is that plus more. But this is a critical first step along the path, and I'm very eager to see what the future holds in that regard. However, there is at least one person who disagrees with me, not Weerd Beard, but Matt LaRosiere at The Reload. And I don't know if you want to talk about that now, Weerd, or you want to have your own... give your own impressions, but either way, the floor is yours.
I've realized I don't actually know Matt's position. I just happen to be on The Reload pulling down some other news stories, and I said, "Oh, that's a good enough article."
So the article you linked, you didn't bother to read. Oh, jeez.
I didn't think it had anything extra in. I think that I had in there, but clearly it did. So there was
I'm Weerd Beard. I link things I don't read.
I mean, I barely know how to read anyway. That's why I do podcasts.
This is true.
But so the one specific statement is that the whole point on Chevron deference was, these various regulatory bodies or industry groups are the experts on the matter, so therefore they will know best on how to regulate themselves, which, I mean, you should be, rolling your eyes at that right there, because, I mean, it's one of those, like, Chevron deference is Chevron oil. And it's one of those, like, so you're going to have an oil company regulate how it's going to be, like, handling its emissions and handling its various affairs with chemicals and toxins and all that. I don't trust them.
We investigated ourselves for wrongdoing and found no wrongdoing occurred.
100% correct. And so it's one of those, like, it's more horrifying than laughable, but it's both laughable and horrifying. And so but essentially what they said was the agencies will have a certain degree of latitude still in how they regulate and interpret laws set by Congress, but they will not have the ability to essentially fully interpret the laws. They will be able to use their discretion in certain levels, but when it comes to if there's any ambiguity, the court has ruled that they will have to approach Congress and ask them to settle the ambiguity. So,
one of the positions that Mr. LaRosiere has, and I apologize if I am mispronouncing his name, he seems to think that even though this is a good decision, it's not going to have the far-reaching consequences a lot of people think it has. And his position is, for example, the ATF has been expressly disclaiming and attempting to avoid the application of Chevron deference for years because they knew that Chevron was on shaky ground and because its application to laws with criminal penalties is inappropriate. And the government has consistently asserted in gun cases that legal arguments are ordinary legal arguments rather than agency arguments, which are entitled to deference under Chevron. And then there's the fact that we've had Chevron deference around for 40 years. So it has become, more than habitual. It's become ingrained. It's traditional. And there's going to be, it's going to be difficult to overrule that line of thinking of the courts, of the legislatures, of deferring to these agencies. And so that's where I said the lawsuits are probably going to come from. So the reload is being a bit of a Debbie Downer. I see where he's coming from. I don't specifically disagree with any of his points enough to argue with him, but I disagree. But I disagree with his position that it's only okay and not fantastic.
Yeah, I think the big factor that, I mean, really where Chevron's going to kick in on the Second Amendment side of things is how the ATF is. Again, there are so many gun laws that are out there that there is no letter of the law. It's all based on these ATF white papers that come out that we hate so much. Such as right now they're debating and they're kind of deciding they're probably going to hold off until after the election because it's going to piss people off on how extreme they're leaning towards what is the engaging in the business. And of course they've already murdered one person over this, and there's been a few other people that have been arrested and frog marched and all of that over engaging in the business of selling firearms. But there's nothing in the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act that says anything about what it means. It just says can't be engaged in the business of, and the ATF can decide exactly what that means and nobody else. And there's also, I hold an 03 CNR FFL, and that says that's a collector's license, not a business license. So I can't operate a gun shop under that license, but I can, buy Mosin Nagants from across the country and have them shipped directly to my door. But it's also specifically says I'm not allowed to engage in the business of buying and selling firearms with this. Well,
but Weerd, what does it mean to be engaged in the business?
Nobody has any damn idea. It has been expressly stated that it is not illegal for me to buy a firearm on my FFL and then sell or trade it to somebody else. For all that, and I'm pretty open. I have done that on several occasions. But there is just some level of where does it factor in as a business?
Exactly. I mean, on the one hand, you buy a gun every now and then. Sometimes you turn it over. You're obviously not engaged in the business. You're buying 20 identical Glock 19s. Yeah, you're probably engaged in some business. Mm-hmm. But there is a vast chasm between those 2 points, and that's where things get very fuzzy. And it reminds me of that, gosh, it's been so long, it's almost attained mythical status, that description of what is pornography. I don't know, but I'll know it when I see it.
Yes.
And that's exactly the position the ATF here is taking. Mm-hmm. Oh, they're not, well... Actually, they may have to now, but up until this point, they didn't have to enumerate what it was. It was just, we'll know it when we see it.
Yeah. Well, on the sticking back to the Second Amendment and going from the other direction, you have very frequently, you'll often hear President Biden saying, "Oh, nobody needs a magazine that holds 100 bullets," and we can argue whether or not 100 round drum magazine is a practical or useful item at all, and all that. I don't personally care, but
I'm told those Beta C mags jam a lot.
Yeah, yep. I mean, you certainly don't see the military using them. They're more than happy to just use as many 30 round Magpul mags as they can carry. But the bottom line is, while President Biden may say nobody needs a 100-round magazine, and we can have a debate on one of that. And there's certainly discussion to be had, even in the pro-gun world, certainly in the military world, because again, we don't see police forces or military forces that are not restricted on anything carrying around the Beta C mags and other things like that. But that's hyperbole. They want to ban 11-round magazines. They want it only to be 10-round magazines, or maybe even 5-round magazines. We don't know. But let me tell you, they don't want anything anywhere near 100-round magazines. You're not going to be safe with a 99 or a 50-round drum magazine. No, they want to ban pretty much everything you've got. But they say 100-round magazine because that's a fallacy ad absurdum of talking.
Well, it's the Mott and Bailey approach.
Correct.
Yep. And then their idea is once they get you to agree with that, they will slowly notch the Overton window closer and closer. I've got, I guess we'll call it a theory, that nearly all of these gun prohibitionists, what they really desire is, and the generous interpretation here, because we can easily say they don't want any, but the generous interpretation is revolver pistols, pump-action shotguns, lever-action rifles, and that's it. I'm convinced that's what they want.
I mean, I will note that lever-action rifles are banned in Australia, as are pump-action shotguns. So I think that is, and have been for 30-some years. So yeah, you're being very generous, but you're also being accurate. They specifically are stuck on just the very, very conservative hunting firearms. Mm-hmm. And I will further note that you don't ever want to be in that situation where the Second Amendment is synonymous with hunting, as they attempted to do for years, because, hey, guess what? You want to put meat on the table, go down to the grocery store. You want a hobby? Take up golf. There's no need for you to go off in the woods and shoot at animals. It's too dangerous. It's too bad. There's hunting accidents that happen all the time. It's not safe. It's not good. And it's gone. But the moment they're saying, no, I'm carrying this gun to protect myself, that's hard to argue. You can argue, but you'll end up looking real insensitive and real crappy. Mm-hmm. They'll just take it away from you. Yeah, dick.
Yeah, because police have guns taken away from them by criminals all the time. There's just an epidemic of criminals disarming and killing cops.
It's certainly not an epidemic. It happens, but
of course it happens.
But police have far more interactions, and there are ways around that, and there's certainly considerably less of that within the civilian world. There's less civilian shootings as there are police shootings, but I would argue that I haven't really broken down the raw numbers, but I would argue that the percentage of civilian shootings where the person is disarmed by their attacker is considerably lower than police. Mainly because essentially if a civilian pulls a firearm on somebody, then and of course I realize I'm being inaccurate in the fact that peace officers are civilians. So instead, non-peace officers are pulling firearms in a self-defense situation. As a general rule, it's go time. But police officers often find themselves wrestling and trying to restrain suspects, and that is very much an instance where a gun can get stripped out. But yeah, I think this is a really, really good wing. I think overall it's going to be great, and specifically on the grounds of the on the grounds of the Second Amendment, I think it's going to be really, really good, because the ATF. Like, the gun laws are just so obnoxiously vague. Certainly ones that are written recently. And I mean, we've even got instances here in Massachusetts where Maura Healey just dictated that, I've just decided that it says, or copycats of, and I'm going to decide that a copycat is anything I don't like. if you use AR-15 roll pins in your semi-auto firearm, it's an assault weapon. So it's...
That's the episode where I titled it Mara May I, and I'm just so abominably pleased with that pun.
I mean, that is exactly what it is, because she literally said, people said, how do I know? So she openly said, and I've got the quote, did an audio fisk on it, said, I'm not going to tell people how I determine what an assault weapon is or not. If there is a test, of which I suspect there actually isn't, I think it's literally just, what do I feel like today? But if there was an actual empirical test on how to determine what an assault weapon is or not, very similar to the various tests that people did in the 1994 to 2004 assault weapons ban, where they were, okay, you got a straight crown muzzle, and the pistol grip's the one feature, fixed stock. Okay, you're good. Don't use any magazines that hold more than 10 rounds that were made before 1994 or after 1994. Okay, you're good. And that gun is perfectly kosher and perfectly clean. Instead, she has just said, nope, I'm just going to decide if I don't like the looks of that gun, it's going to be a copycat and therefore illegal, no matter how configured. And we were asking, well, how do I figure out if my gun is legal or not? Well, I'm not going to tell you that, but what you can do is you can send it into the Attorney General's office. We will look at it, and then we will tell you if it's okay or not. And so literally, and of course the Gun Owners Action League put on an immediate thing of going, do not do this. Do not do this. Just simply interpret it however you want and buy what you want, because if you send in new guns that have not been expressly forbidden by the AG's office, you may just end up expanding the list.
And also, they know you have it now.
Yes.
Oh yeah, we've declared it's contraband. We know you have the contraband. It's ours.
We have a firearms registry. But I will say openly, because we have a firearms registry. I have a firearm, a fairly rare firearm that several Massachusetts FFLs refused to transfer it to me because they didn't want to chance it. And I don't blame it. One guy apologized profusely. He called his lawyer, said, let me know what you think about this. The lawyer called back, said, don't do it. And he goes, oh, I'm really sorry. I was hoping he'd say it would be okay. And I said, what's your transfer fee? He goes, $20. I said, you're not willing to risk your entire FFL for $20? And he smiled and went, okay, I understand. So I ended up, since it was a long gun, I could take possession of it in New Hampshire. I had it transferred to a shop in New Hampshire, and picked it up there, brought it home, and then dutifully registered it with Massachusetts, so they know I have it. And I'm specifically not naming it here. But though some people may figure out which one I'm talking about, but that gun is registered with the state and all that. But again, I mentioned it's a rare gun, so therefore they may not know what the hell it was on the listing, and so therefore it didn't get flagged. Or it might be okay. Again, I talked to my wife. I said, we're going to be playing a little games. I think it's I'll take it to court. I don't care. I think I've got it solid, and it's a unconstitutional law anyway, so whatevs. But if I'm grumpy now, while I'm grumpy, let's just talk about the next story.
Yeah, I mean, we had this really fantastic ruling, and then the Supreme Court said, nah, fam, and declined to grant cert to a whole bunch. 7 firearm cases. And I asked the question, I didn't get a good answer. Some of them were granted, vacated, and remanded. Others were just vacated and remanded. I'm not sure what the difference is between granting and not granting cert. If you're just going to vacate and remand, it's probably some sort of very, very fine point of legalese.
I'm very open, and it was very, very clear when I was interviewing Costas Maros that, I don't really understand exactly how the Supreme Court works. Certainly on these procedures of how cases get to them and how they choose and what they don't choose and the up and downs of it. There's essentially, it means that it's my understanding that like probably means over the next year, there's not going to be another Second Amendment case.
That's really what it looks like.
Yeah. So again, we'll just leave it at that. So it just means that like some of the cases that I was hoping for, like I was really hoping for an assault weapons ban case. Number one, because of the story that I just told.
Yeah.
and the guns that Mara Healy has declared that are assault weapons that are registered to my name and in my safe right now. I am a proud owner of an FAL, and that FAL is 110% a copycat assault weapon. And I did own an AK, and I don't know when the statute of limitations runs out, but I sold it. I'm not a fan of the AK platform, and that gun taught me that. And so I sold the AK, but I did own it, and it was a Wasser 10, which is a copycat assault weapon, no matter what the configuration was. So I would have loved to have seen this get remanded and also to be able to buy big boy magazines. The good news sort of is that we do have two judges on SCOTUS that are very two-way. Alito noticed that he wanted to review these cases, and Judge Thomas, who's basically the most two-way judge I have ever seen. He's practically a fire-breathing radical in that regard. If there's been a more pro-Second Amendment judge on the court, it was from before we ever started banning guns in this country.
Right, exactly. And so in his, I don't know if it was the dissent or not, but he basically said to the court, because look, I don't fully understand it, but some of these cases are in an interlocutory posture, which basically means they haven't made their way fully through the appellate process, which makes me wonder, well, why were they being seen by SCOTUS in the first place? I don't fully understand. I tried. It made my head hurt. But really what he's getting at is he's saying, look, once we've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, and finally they've made their way up, y'all had better grant cert to at least one of them.
Yeah. And that's where I wanted to close this with my Pollyanna is it does not mean that they are dead and dead forever. It is not like the Warman v. Healy, which was the assault weapons ban case against then Attorney General, now Governor of Massachusetts, Mara Healy, and her little edict about assault weapons, and we were challenging it on Second Amendment grounds, and so that was just nuked. That case is gone. That case, they refused to hear it, and so therefore the Massachusetts Appellate Court that said absolutely there's no reason to own an AR-15. AR-15s are weapons of war. Literally was what the judge said, and all that, and that is law of the land. But these cases have a very strong potential of coming back. So while we are not going to get them probably, until at least 2026. That's better than never at all. And the second thing that I am going to say is that hopefully there will be some changes of things in the election towards a more Second Amendment friendly House and Senate. And therefore would allow us to start passing Second Amendment laws. And we just need to get going. And especially if we're entering into election season. If you start seeing people campaign for, on the Second Amendment and say that they are supporters, talk to them, get them going through, talk about them getting a national prohibition on assault weapons, get them to get the Hearing Protection Act, get them to get, national reciprocity of concealed carry. I mean, these are the Hearing Protection Act and the national reciprocity of concealed carry is right there in turnkey. Just completely repealing the NFA would be an absolutely amazing one. These are all things that we can just do with a bill becoming law. And boy, there's a whole lot of people talking about being fans of the Second Amendment. I know. It's one of those Republicans love the Second Amendment until election day. But hopefully, I find it hard to believe that all of them are just doing it just to win our votes. So while we put a lot of weight and we've been having a lot of joy with the courts with this Chevron deference case, with the NYSERPA case, it's been really, really good stuff. Again, we have the 4 branches of government, or 3 branches of government, and it's all set up that way. I count the House and Senate. I hope everybody has done that, but we have the 3 branches of government, and it's designed to be that way. It's not all on the Supreme Court to rule and repeal all these gun laws. We can just repeal them by passing laws. That's how the federal assault weapons ban went away. We talk about. It's there. It wasn't a favorable Supreme Court ruling that got the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act that we're talking about, that hopefully just got gutted by Chevron deference. But again, as Aaron said, time will tell because people are going to fight it. But there is still hope. It's not the end of the world. We don't necessarily have to wait, and we shouldn't wait. We should be active, and we should be pushing that. Come on, don't just have there be gun control laws and people fighting against gun control laws. Get on the offensive, pass some Second Amendment laws.
So are we not going to touch Rahimi?
We touched it last time, didn't we? I thought we did.
Did we? We may very well have. My memory is crap.
Yeah, I'm looking at the episode 305 post, Return from Liberty Con, which is why.
That would be why I wasn't there for that one.
Oh, that's true. Yes, yeah, you were still traveling. Yeah, you were stuck in Atlanta traffic. Yes, no, we absolutely covered Rahimi. Noted that yes, it was in my opinion, it is a bad decision. You don't lose your Second Amendment rights without due process, and restraining orders are not due process. This was a prime example of why so many of the heroes of the Second Amendment in the Supreme Court are absolutely amazing things. I've met Dick Heller. He's an amazing dude. He's just awesome. I'd never got a chance to meet Otis McDonald. Never heard a bad thing about the man. He seemed absolutely amazing as well. And just salt of the earth, really, really good people. David has talked in great length because he was a member of New York State Rifle and Pistol Association, and they are just a great and rock solid organization. And Rahimi was a pile of crap, and some of that was intentional for the courts because they were stacking it in their favor. The court was squeamish about granting a ruling for such a pile of crap, even though it doesn't do anything because Rahimi is currently in prison and will be for a long time, if not forever. I didn't look too deeply into it, but he was a bad dude, and he's sitting in the bad boy chair. And so it was a bad ruling, and we touched on it last week. You didn't get a chance to. Do you have anything to say about it, Aaron?
No, not really.
Yeah.
You've covered everything.
Yeah.
It's just one of my go-to quotes is H.L. Mencken. The trouble with fighting for human freedom is that one spends most of one's time defending scoundrels, for it is against scoundrels that oppressive laws are first aimed, and oppression must be stopped at the beginning if it's to be stopped at all. So, yeah, it's a really hard sell to defend the Second Amendment rights of a convicted domestic abuser. But yeah, you've got to start, you have to start fighting unfair laws when they start targeting the low-hanging fruit, because after a while, you've got the strength of precedent behind them, and it's so much harder to fight. But hey, here's some good news.
Let's hear some good news.
As of Independence Day, which I'm certain was deliberate, Louisiana becomes the 29th state to pass some version of permitless carry. And for those wondering, we're very close to that important 2/3 number. That would be 33.
Mm-hmm.
And we've gotten the easy states. The others are going to be difficult, because I feel like the ones that are most likely to happen next would be North Carolina, which has been difficult for no reason I've fully understood, and then Virginia, and that's going to be such a hard sell because of the DC Metro incursion up north. And I'm not sure about some of the others. I'm not really conversant with the Midwest, like say Minnesota, but it's going to be harder. And I don't know if it's really the point of diminishing returns, but we are now getting much less bang for our buck. But I have a lot of confidence that we will eventually get there. It's just going to take a lot longer.
Yeah, and it's certainly getting to the point where the traveling concealed carry person is now no longer has like a just separate wallet just for your various out of state carry permits.
Mm-hmm.
Like
but
I said,
the best thing,
yeah.
But the best thing about this Louisiana law is that it lowers the age requirement for concealed carry, because previously it was just 21 and up. But now with this law, as long as you're a legal adult of 18 years old,
mm-hmm.
you can conceal and carry a handgun without a permit. And that is fantastic news, because I have... That's one of my bugbears. It's like you're either an adult or you aren't. And I'm just so tired of this. You're kind of an adult at 18, but you're not fully an adult until 21.
Especially when the big factor that just really just shows the hypocrisy of all of it is the fact that you're while you might not be able to, I think cigarettes are 21 now. You're not allowed to buy alcohol. You're not allowed to cigarettes. There's some other stuff to go through, but for sure you could sign up and you can go into the Marines or the Army. And it's one of those like, yeah, we're more than happy to send you off to some other country and have you die for us. But, you want to buy a handgun? You want a concealed carry? No. Yeah, that's it. It's absolute hypocrisy.
That's why in the military, a lot of the senior NCOs basically go, look, as long as you're discreet, I'm going to look the other way for that very reason, So as long as you aren't, publicly drunk, as long as you aren't, getting arrested for DUIs, as long as you, aren't hungover and missing your roll call, you're an adult. I'll treat you like an adult. But that's just within the military, on certain bases. It's not blanket.
Yep. No, and it makes sense, and it's respectful. It's respectful because guess what? You treat people like adults, and chances are you're going to get more adult-like behavior. But yeah, this is good stuff, and again, it's more states where either you have just your local carry permit, or you don't have a carry permit at all because you don't want to play that game. Now you can. There's so many more states that you can carry in, and there's people that can live in a part of this country where they will never, ever, ever need a carry permit, which is amazing because when I started getting into this whole shebango, it was just Vermont and Alaska. So yeah, this is amazing news, and we're going through. But like you said, I think it's going to start slowing down as well. We might get one or two more, but again, there's always that possibility of the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act, which is already written up. It's already ready to go. Somebody just needs to pick it, to dust it off, and to probably do a couple of edits to it to make it viable for whatever legislative session that it's a part of. but that's a turnkey thing, and turn that into it, and guess what? Ta-da! You get your local permit, and you can carry in all 50 states and territories.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm going to finish off before we get into the segments with this one. This I could not resist. I saw this one, and there's the article has a news story because I for sure wanted some confirmation on this because, well, I'll explain it in just a little bit, but this happened.
Yeah, you look at this and you go, "This is a joke, right?" Because this is a May.
Yeah, this happened in Georgia, Vermont.
Well, did it happen in Georgia? Or did it happen in Vermont?
I know. I had no idea there was a Georgia, Vermont. I just opened up was it on Champlain? Look at that. I am going to be in August. I'm going to be right near Georgia, Vermont, and probably right near where this happened because it can't be that big. Yeah, it's just it's right in between Milton and St. Albans and South Hero. So yeah, that's where Georgia, Vermont is. I didn't realize that I drive so close to it so often. But yeah, in a late night defensive action, let's see. A homeowner encountered 3 armed individuals attempting to force entry into his residence, and he reacted to the threat by opening his door and firing a muzzle-loading rifle into one of the intruders, effectively stopping the break-in. He shot one guy. He made it into the neighbor's yard and collapsed. The other 2 guys effed off in proper fashion. And that was the end of the story. And so, yeah, it doesn't.
I disagree with that being the end of the story.
Okay.
So, yeah, the other 2 suspects fled the scene. Then in the next sentence, Vermont State Police have been actively investigating the case, executing a search warrant at the residence. So here's my thinking. I have nothing to back this up with other than a hunch.
I think I know where you're talking, but you might have some grounds.
So unless a convicted felon who has served his time has his rights restored, he is not allowed to own a firearm. But for these purposes, a muzzleloader or any sort of black powder rifle is not considered a firearm unless used in a crime. And why would a man have a muzzleloader loaded and ready to go? And given the fact that the police immediately executed a search warrant, I'm thinking that they knew that this guy had a record and thought that, just to pull an example out of my rear end, okay, maybe he was dealing drugs, and that's why there was the home invasion, in order to get drugs or drug money. Because I can't think of a good reason why, a home invasion that resulted in this would require a search warrant unless the homeowner had a history to him, and there's just enough circumstantial evidence that makes me go, I wonder.
That certainly seems to be, as a general rule, home invasions in the United States do tend to be around drug crime, namely trying to steal the drugs or the money. And so, yeah, that certainly has a potential. Vermont is also a rural state, and I'm very familiar with the area, and Georgia is well into the sticks of Vermont. And so it could very well be that he is one of the many hunters that live in the state of Vermont, and he loaded up his muzzle loader at the beginning of the season, and until he sees a deer, or it's the end of the season and he's going to send that ball into a berm somewhere, that muzzle loader is going to stay loaded up anyway, and so it would be as easy to ready a muzzle loader to fire in that condition as it would be to chamber around on a handgun or a rifle.
Sure.
So yeah, that's also a distinct possibility. But
And I would be more inclined to agree with that if they hadn't executed a search warrant on the homeowner.
Yeah, and I've certainly seen that. That was, there's not a lot of information about this person, and that was also something that popped into my head was, is this a convicted felon? Is this somebody who bought a muzzleloader because it is not considered a firearm per ATF standards, and so therefore it is perfectly legal for them to own it and use it in self-defense. But yeah, the thing that popped into my head immediately was, is this a joke? Is this somebody doing a version of the copy pasta that I think everyone should be familiar with, of the own a musket for home defense, says is what the founding fathers intended. 4 ruffians break into my house. What the devil? As I grab my powdered wig and Kentucky rifle, blow a golf ball sized hole in the first man. He's dead on the spot. Draw my pistol and fire on the second man. Miss him entirely because it's a smoothbore and it nails the neighbor's dog. I have to resort to the cannon mounted on the top of the stairs loaded with grape shot. Tally ho, lads! The grape shot shreds 2 men in the blast, and the sound and extra shrapnel set off car alarms. Fix bayonets and charge the last terrified rapscallion. He bleeds out waiting for the police to arrive since triangular bayonet wounds are impossible to stitch up. Just as the founding fathers intended. And I can assure, again, follow the show notes. Included, there is a local news report, so that's just about as good as I need to confirm that this actually happened, and it wasn't just somebody attempting to write a more practical news story around that hilarious anecdote.
You know them as the DC Project, but they have a new name. Weerd interviews Amanda Suffolk to find out what and why.
I am happy to welcome back to the Assorted Calibers podcast Amanda Suffolk, who of course is an NRA board member, but she is also a host of Eye on the Target Radio. And I mentioned in the last one that she is and I keep forgetting your title. Is it coordinator, director? Director. Yes. Apologies. But she is a director for the DC Project. And I think we've talked about the DC Project before on the Assorted Calibers podcast, but it's been long enough that I think we need to talk about it again. Amanda, tell us about the DC Project.
Well, the DC Project this year has gone through a renaming. So those of you who know it as the DC Project will now start to hear it as its tagline, which was Women for Gun Rights. And so it had been DC Project - Women for Gun Rights. But now we're like, when you really Google DC Project, if you're not in the gun world, you get a lot of different things. And so we wised up and said, why don't we have a name that actually says what we are? And so to those of you who are in the 2A world, we are the ladies in teal who show up at legislative sessions all over the place. And so it's our own little teal grouping, teal summer camp or something, if you will. The absolute cool part is Diana Muller had a vision when she started to put this together, and I think it was 2015. So I'm saying we're heading for 9 years. You know, I cannot believe the next year will be 10. It's that. And the goal is that who talks to legislators about laws that impact our Second Amendment rights, and if they get to see a face that doesn't look like a big burly guy with a beard in plaid, maybe they'll sit up or look up or wake up. And when she started to pull those girls together, she found out that she has got professionals in all different areas, in all different walks of life, that can speak on the Second Amendment very knowledgeably about the things that impact them and matter to them. And it makes it easier for the legislators so that it's not a single demographic issue. It's much bigger than that. And the DC Project is very instrumental in setting that to happen.
I mean, that is a absolute great point. And I've got to say that I don't want to be sexist here at all, but I will say from all my knowledge of the various people in the Second Amendment activist group, overall, I found that you almost always get on the male side is where the real hardcore gun geeks come from. I'm a co-host of Handgun Radio, where all we do is talk about handguns and our love of handguns and how cool revolvers are and that sort of stuff. And there's a lot of the professional hunters and all of that stuff. But it seems like many of the female activists are definitely much more into the software side of the Second Amendment, where it is no, it's not about, whether it's AR-15s or revolvers or handguns or Glocks or whatever. It's really more about protecting our rights, protecting our safety, protecting our families and all that. And I think that so often that hunting and shooting aspect of the Second Amendment, especially back in the dark days when the Second Amendment suddenly became synonymous with hunting, has really kind of given people who might not necessarily be on our side, not necessarily our enemies, but people that may not be sympathetic to us, more of an idea that, we're against banning AR-15s because we have AR-15s and we love them and we want to keep our AR-15s. Not that bans on AR-15s will drastically affect everyone's life in a negative fashion.
Well, you're right, and there's a couple things to that. Is that some of these gals have been victimized in some way, and so somebody who's gun neutral has a really hard time talking to somebody who has been hit, kicked, knocked down, something with someone who's bigger, stronger, faster than they are, and that they either had the tool to defend themselves or wished they had the tool to defend themselves. They have a hard time kind of fighting that fight, saying, well, no, you don't have a right to it. Because what you're saying is you don't have a right to then exist because the stronger person gets to do whatever they want. And so that argument has been one thing. The AR-15 argument has been for the women who do competitive shooting, to show that, guess what? It's a smaller size. It can be a smaller size platform that they can function with, that they can easily use. So size, again, doesn't matter. And so there's all of this. And then when you add to it that, then there's a change in the weather. There's been something that's really started to take place when the Armed Women of America, A Girl and a Gun, the Gunpowder Gals, these groups of women that started to get together socially and say, let's talk about skill sets and let's talk about concerns and let's talk about knowledge and training and all of this. Women, remember, we ask for directions when we don't know where we're going. And you guys just use your testosterone to get you there. You kind of will it. So we also go for training. And so the amount of firearms training that has taken place when women started to really get into this market has really picked up. And then when the government says, oh, you don't need this gun or you don't need that gun, all of a sudden these women are going, wait, that's my gun you're talking about. When they say that, they found 3 rifles and 1,000 rounds of ammunition in this cache of weapons, they're like, yeah, that's my gun safe, right? So it's really kind of changed the awareness of the news organizations, keywords, code words, scary words. And so women fighting for gun rights in the organization Women for Gun Rights it has been very instrumental in that.
Yeah, that is awesome. Do you have any good stories from the last DC event? You guys go to DC once a year, correct?
Correct. We do I have any good stories? I have so many good stories, and I'm not sure how many of them I could really tell on the radio. No, but the really cool part is, as an adult, how many times do you get to go to summer camp with your heroes? And for me, being part of Women for Gun Rights, I get to go every year. And I mean, I get to have coffee with Dick Heller. I get to stand on the Supreme Court steps. I get to talk to the women who are running state organizations all over the country. Some that are winning their fights, some that are fighting their fights, some that are getting, their hat handed to them. And we strategize about how can we help or what can we do and what's going on. And it's an amazing opportunity that again, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna say that every one of these organizations that you hear about that's a Second Amendment organization it's a machine that runs on money. And so the DC Project, Women for Gun Rights, as they were created in the very beginning, everybody was on their own time, on their own dime. So think about moms and people who have full-time jobs that take 3 days, 4 days, fly across the country, use vacation, separate from their families. Their kids are trying to get on the bus. The husband's now packing lunch, kind of thing. And yet we're in DC making a difference. So it's just an amazing organization. And if people feel that, look us up, and if they feel generous, we wouldn't say no. And if you're like, yeah, my budget doesn't allow it, then just go online and buy a T-shirt and represent us and support us in the wearing of teal when you go to a Second Amendment event. Those things all bring awareness, and that awareness all helps the overall goal.
I mean, well, that is awesome. And buy a T-shirt with the with the new name. And so, what's that new name again?
Women for Gun Rights. And so the website is womenforgunrights.org. And so I'm actually today on my list is I'm ordering more new T-shirts because we've been moving through them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm glad I actually hadn't heard about the name change, so it's very, very topical that we had you on.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Amanda Suffolk. Of course, she is from Eye on the Target Radio and the NRA board, and we're so glad to have you on.
Thanks.
Yeah, when I sat down with Amanda to talk about the excitement of the NRA annual meeting, I thought it would be nice to just follow up with her work on the DC project, and I hadn't even heard about the name change. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is great. This is some news out there because I haven't heard that. And actually, when you look at the website now, it says Women for Gun Rights, the DC Project, which reminds me of one of my all-time favorite video games, Thief, the Dark Project.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure when it happened, but it was earlier this year. So, by definition, it's only been within about the past 6 months, I believe. I could be wrong.
Yeah, and I have to agree with her. Just the DC Project is a little too vague. It doesn't quite understand what's going on, just like Thief, the Dark Project. What's the Dark Project? If you played the game, you know, but if you don't, you don't. It's no spoilers. So, yeah, better to be more descriptive. And again, it's kind of nice. The Moms Demand Action gets a lot of traction when it comes to lobbying legislatures, and it's good to have our own ladies on our side. So moving on to our final segment of the evening, Xander has picked up a handy tool for the farm, an air rifle, but it doesn't have iron sights. Now what?
Welcome to Independent Thoughts with yours truly, Xander Opal. A little bit off the cuff today again. Things have gotten a little bit less crazy on the farm, but I'm still pretty busy catching things up. Anyway. So I finally had a little bit of time to start sighting in the red dot I put on my air rifle. Now, a lot of folks might scoff at air rifles, thinking of them as mere toys, when in fact they are not. In fact, Lewis and Clark took an air rifle on their expedition because it could be fired 20 times without reloading. Yeah, there was an air rifle developed for military use. Was it shortly after the U.S. Revolution? Yes, the War for Independence. They were so effective that they were specifically targeted by the opposition and treated with horror, much like the Germans in World War II were horrified by slam-fire trench guns. So, the Founding Fathers, when they came up with the Second Amendment and the commentary thereupon, were quite aware of so-called high-capacity magazines and the lethality of something used to take down deer which is what Lewis and Clark brought it with them, which is also quite powerful enough to take down a human being. Similar mass. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. I've got a air rifle, similar model, or same model as one that Aaron has, and had some issues. Couldn't get the scope that it came with to work right. So I decided instead to get a Weaver to Picatinny rail adapter and put a red dot on it. Now, unfortunately, I wasn't able to properly get it sighted in, despite getting a cheap bench rest, and I'll go into that in a minute as well. I did learn a few things. And honestly, these things are applicable to more powerful firearms. This is only about 60 feet or so that I was using to sight in, because that's where it was convenient with minimal wind. There is a tendency for this one to shoot a couple inches off to one side, but in this case I do wish I had gotten an actual target rather than just sticking a cardboard box up and attempting to walk the dot onto the site, or the latest hole. Wash, rinse, repeat. For one, the color of the box made it really hard to make out the red dot against it in daylight. I actually, at one point, was waving a hand in front of the red dot site as I was taking aim, so that I had a dot staying momentarily in my retinas, and I could briefly track it after I moved my hand. So that led to taking some extra time, and also extra fiddling that I otherwise wouldn't have had to do if I had a darker colored target that I could just make out the dot against. Then, because it's a break action type air rifle, where the breaking the action open operates the pump to, or at least primes the mechanism while breaking it open so I could put the next pellet in. And I had to lift it out of the shooting rest to do that, which meant I couldn't consistently keep it in the same place. That would have made things a lot easier and faster, such as if I had a bolt action or semi-auto firearm, of course. And, well, that goes on to the next step. The shooting rest was a $40 cheap one I got off Amazon. It'll do the job, more or less, but it doesn't receive the proportions of the air rifle consistently and well. Perhaps if I marked locations on the stock and the forearm to consistently place it back in the same spot over again, that would help. But it's much too narrow. Still, a lot more consistent than just standing there with amateur hour long arm skills. So, with that said, there's a couple things I can do better. I just sat it on top of a 50-gallon drum, and that made for not the best setup. I don't have a proper range, unlike David, and that factors into things. And furthermore, speaking of consistency, that adapter, under the powerful jolting of the air rifle mechanism, the adapter actually came loose a little bit, which lets things get thrown off. and the screws are going to have a date with some Loctite in the near future. I think either David or Aaron warned me about that fact, and however, I needed to learn that the hard way. Such is life. Still, for a budget cost, I will eventually have something I can remove pest creatures with from the farm, as well as fairly cheap practice with long arm skills. And that's actually a pretty good bargain. In addition, the red dot I am learning to use and install. In addition, I'm not tying up a more expensive firearm that is potentially more effective with my amateur gunsmithing and general work. That said, so again, it's something that I think has been well worth my time and money, and hopefully can be well worth someone else's time, and a good way, again, to get some experience with these things without having to worry about screwing up something truly expensive. Have fun, be safe. I hope I gave you something to think about.
So I'm going to preempt all of our listeners who I can already hear screaming that the German protest against Winchester Model 1897 shotguns was in World War I and not II. Okay? We know. We've settled that. Move on.
I realized I didn't put the Ian McCollum bit where he is cussing like a sailor with an 1897 shotgun. That's it'll be in the show notes. It's going to be in the show notes.
So there's a picture of me which is not okay. It is technically on the internet, but it's not floating around, and it's not labeled, and it's not going to be labeled because it's me pre-transition, and I don't like sharing that. But it's at the bidet shoot that we had when I first met Oddball. And this is something like, it's over 10 years ago at this point. And a Wellawant showed up, and it wasn't a legit Winchester 1897. It was a Chinese copy, but they copied everything, and it was capable of slam firing. And I slam fired it, and I had a blast. And then there's a photo of me. Yeah, I basically, after emptying the tubular magazine, I turn to the right, and I think it's Adam from Gunblog Variety Cast. I think that was him. He was taking a picture, and I've just got this goofy grin on my face. For the very few people who know what I mean when I reference the Dork Tower webcomic, I was trying to do Igor's face when he goes, "It must be mine!" And so, yeah, it was really fun. I'm sure I was horribly inaccurate with it, but when you are trench sweeping, I don't think terribly accurate matters.
Yeah, no. Right after I had got my Massachusetts permit and started buying guns, not quite an alarming rate, quite at that exact moment, but it was certainly quite a few. And I was like, "Oh, there's a gun show." Like, it was like an hour's drive from me, but it's a gun show. And I went there and I was checking it out. And when I was there, I saw one of those Chinese trench gun copies, and it had the sword bayonet on it. And I just went, "Oh, it's a shotgun, and it's got a gigantic knife on it. Does a more perfect gun exist?" And so I will say that I am firmly in Team Mossberg when it comes to what is the better shotgun, especially, well, now, given that Mossberg has never had any allegations of poor manufacturing quality, and Remington has gone through a lot of problems and is now really kind of no more. But I was originally in Team Mossberg only because the Mossberg riot shotgun was in fact the 590, and it came with a bayonet lug, and I wanted to stick a big knife on the end of my shotgun, and that was the only reason why I had one. I actually now prefer that design over the 870, which was the other shotgun I was weighing getting for a pump action shotgun, but yeah, having a big knife at the end of your shotgun is really a thing of beauty. As for other vintage military arms, the Girandoni air rifle, it was in fact actually like, I'm reluctant to say sniper rifle, but it was used by marksmen. So that was also another reason why they were targeted, is because they were specifically targeting high value targets. And so therefore you, just the same way as if you were to spot a sniper on the battlefield, they are a priority target, over just your average infantryman, because they're going to be looking for high value targets to take while the infantry is just going to be fighting. But yeah, it was very much a repeating high capacity weapon of war, and the founding fathers had no problem with it and were well aware of it at the time of the drafting of the Second Amendment. And furthermore, to use the Clarence Thomas test, it was like over a century before anyone ever started talking about banning things that had those sort of features. And I think Xander mentioned that it was used. They were using them for hunting on the Lewis and Clark expedition. It was also being used. There is accounts that they would fire at various targets upon getting out of the boats when meeting native tribes, just as a way to say, "Hey, you may have superior numbers to us, but we're not going to go down easy." And that was one of the reasons why the expedition went as well as it did.
So I do want to point out for our listeners who are curious, because I don't think Xander mentioned what kind of air rifle he had, other than it's the one that I have, and that would be I don't know if it's pronounced Gamo or Gamo.
I say Gamo, but I'm probably wrong.
Yeah, but anyway, it's the Gamo Wildcat Whisper air rifle. And he bought it in 177, and I have it in... Actually, I have both. I've got it in 177 and 22. And, wow, they've gone up in price since I got mine. They're currently like around $140, and it's been enough time since I bought it that I don't exactly remember, but I seem to recall they were like in the, like 99, 100, something like that. They've really shot up in price.
As have groceries.
Yeah, as has everything. It's a really neat gun. It's more accurate than I am, and the reason it's called the Whisper, I mean, I wouldn't say that it actually has a suppressor, but the barrel is thick enough that it looks like there is a suppressor built into it.
That fat part at the end of the barrel is 110% a suppressor.
Okay.
Yep. It is completely a suppressor, and that's the reason why it's integral with the barrel, is that it is fully legal for you to have that on the gun, so long as it is not detachable, because that was a loophole that people thought of, was the, I'm buying a suppressor for my air gun, therefore it is not illegal. And yes, but if you take it off and put it on your 22, it is. And so that's also why there was the, I think it was Silencer Co. that made it, but they made a 50 caliber muzzleloader that had a suppressor on it. And the whole point was, it's a 50 state legal. It was 50 caliber, which several states have banned 50 caliber firearms, and it had an integral suppressor to it. But it was since it was a cap lock muzzleloader, it was completely 50 state legal, and that upset a lot of people.
But yeah, as Xander noted, it is break action. And that does require you to unshoulder it. You're definitely not going to get any sort of rapid fire with this. You take it off your shoulder, you practically break it in half. You drop the pellet in there. By the way, just as a recommendation, there is actually in one of the combos something that's known as a pellet pen, and you can buy it separately. And it's shaped like a writing implement, and you can use it to drop a single air rifle pellet into the chamber. And just considering how tiny those pellets are, it makes life so much easier. I would really recommend that you get one. So I'll have a separate link to that as well in the show notes.
And I will say, I mean, certainly, 177 is a very, very small hole in a cardboard box. So I totally get him having trouble spotting, especially with a red dot being something that kind of obscures targets a little bit, especially at certain ranges and certain size holes. But there is a technique for essentially zeroing a rifle with 3 shots, which is you bore sight the gun, essentially look down the barrel, and essentially make sure that the sights and the barrel are kind of pointed in the same direction. That way you release your on paper. Then you fire your first shot, and again, it's good to have a very precise target that you're shooting at. And then what you can do is either place the reticle, put the gun in a shooting rest like Xander had, or a vise or something like that, and place the reticle either on the bullet hole that you made or on the bullseye, and then slowly adjust the scope and keep looking without moving the gun at all from its resting position. Slowly start adjusting the optic until you move the dot from one, or the reticle from one point to the other. So if you're started on the target hole, move it down to the bullseye. If you started on the bullseye, move it up to the target hole, and then shoot a second shot to see how you are, and then the third shot just confirms it.
Also, I asked Xander why he was shooting with a red dot, because it just seemed strange. And his answer was he felt that he didn't need magnification at the ranges he planned to use it on. So, okay, fair enough.
I mean, I know I was looking at also at a Gamo air rifle, and I ordered one on Amazon. I think it must have been 2020, because we had grown a whole bunch of vegetables in our kitchen, kind of as science class, because my kids' school got canceled. And as soon as the ground thawed, we went out, we planted them in my garden, and we were going to watch the garden grow. And then we watched the rabbits grow, because they ate the whole thing. And I immediately went on Amazon and bought an air rifle. And Amazon then said, "Nope, sorry, we don't send this to you," even though it's not a thing. That's not anywhere. But again, our Attorney General can make herself very, very scary. She may not be right, but you'll lose a whole lot of money fighting her.
The process is the punishment.
The
as
process
they say.
is the punishment. But either way, I'm glad Xander got the air rifle. There's a whole lot of pests that's a very, very good cure for. And I've got nothing as a segue into this, so I'm just going to thank our listeners.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you.
Okay.
Because I wasn't sure where I was going to do it, but I want to make sure people listen to it before they tune out, because I know some people tune out.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were paying attention on social media, you saw that on Independence Day, I premiered a new patch, and it was a rainbow flag with a Spartan helmet, and Mola and Labe up top, and below it said Oedipus. Now, this is a family-friendly podcast, so I can't explain what that means. I just want you to look at the tragedy of Oedipus and realize why it's called an Oedipal complex, and I'm sure you'll be able to figure out what it means when, Molan Labe means come and take them. So when I say Molan Labe Oedipus, come and take them,
let's just say in this version of the Greek tragedy, the young Greek prince is played by Samuel L. Jackson.
Precisely. So I ordered 100 of them, and I'm somewhere in the mid 40s now. Like, it's less than 45. And so they're going quickly. The patches are $10, and I cover the shipping unless you want something ridiculous like a dozen of them, or you want them shipped to a foreign country. But as long as it's within the United States and I can fit them in an envelope, it's $10 per patch, and I'll mail them to you. So please get them while I still have them, because they are going pretty quickly. And
I will just say, contact Aaron Paulette if you agree with me. But you got somebody who ordered a patch, and you believe that they were using text to speech or speech to text, and they said that they wanted a moron labia patch. And I want that design, but made it look like it's done in crayon and have it say moron labia on it, because I want that in a t-shirt. If you agree with me, contact Aaron Paulette, and if enough of you say so, she'll have no choice but to have it made, and then we all get shirts.
I mean, if there's a market for it, I will sell a lot of questionable things for my charity, because I probably didn't mention this, but yes, this is benefiting Operation Blazing Sword, a 501c3 charity organization. Hey, speaking of mailing, I don't know if you all know this, but next week, July 14th, so if you're not a patron, it's already too late, the stamps go up in price. They're going up from 68 to 73. So if you're planning on buying some stamps, get them before Sunday.
All right, but you know who doesn't go up in price?
Our listeners.
I don't even know what that means. If you're offended, I don't know why. But thank you so much for tuning into our show. Each and every one of you, we really appreciate all of the listeners and the ears and all of that. But a very special thanks to all our supporters on Patreon. So you can go to Patreon, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast to sign up. Patrons get an early release of the podcast, plus bonus content like the hilarious blooper reels, the ACB film track, the ACB mag dump, and Aaron's latest project. Speaking of Shogun, the second episode is out. I was super duper jet lagged on Independence Day, and Aaron said, I want you to watch the whole thing before you publish it. And I said, okay. And I watched the whole thing, and I was kind of like, I don't want to, but I was just going to publish it and say it's fine. I know you put out good stuff. And guess what? She did put out good stuff. It was amazing. And I'm really glad you made me watch it. I probably will just not even argue the next time. When the next one comes out, I'm just going to watch it, because I am really enjoying the series.
Good boy. I'm glad you are. I don't know if anyone else is, because I haven't gotten any feedback. I have the sads. I would really appreciate it if someone would watch it and give me some feedback, and maybe even ask me some questions that I can then answer before the show. So it's not like I'm just talking into the abyss. I'm actually having a conversation with people.
Mm-hmm. Yep. There's a comment section on each of the entries on Patreon, and of course also you can reach out to Aaron and I, because we make ourselves pretty well known out there.
Wow, you just made me sound really slutty.
You aren't?
I mean, in nature I am, but in practice I am not. We're talking cobwebs.
But what should people do with our lovely podcast besides be slutty?
Well, they should also hawk Tua on it. Because I talked about cobwebs, and so we've got to talk about Hawk Tua Girl. But other than spitting on that thing, our listeners should also remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts, subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
That's right. Bring them together just like the Hawk Tuah girl has brought us all together. And you can get more from me at my blog, which is weerdworld.com. It's weerdworld.com. And of course, you can also just click on the show notes because I've got my trip to Ogden on there. I do use my blog for blog things occasionally. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
He's a labia moron, and I need someone to Hawk Tuah on. Speaking of Shogun, our needs are assorted, in a Weird's case special, and so is our podcast. Good night, everyone.